You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
You're listening to the Show Jumping Podcast, a fun and informative show for riders, owners, trainers, grooms, and fans of all levels.
I'm Kristy McCormick in Saratoga Springs, New York.
And I'm Kimmy Carlson in St. Louis, Missouri.
And you're listening to the Show Jumping Podcast, where we deliver at-home riding exercises to our listeners and chat with fellow horse enthusiasts about the world of show jumping. Before our guest, a quick word from our title sponsor.
Relyne GI is a natural, long-term alternative that goes beyond masking symptoms. This unique blend of gut-friendly hyaluronan and wellness-boosting beta-glucan works with your horse's body to soothe and protect their digestive system. Unlike traditional therapies that can disrupt digestion and nutrient absorption, Relyne GI leaves your horse's natural balance intact. But don't take our word for it. Relyne GI is field tested by leading veterinarians and backed by peer-reviewed research, including a study by Dr. Nathan Slovis, showing it effectively reduces gastric ulcers in active horses. Plus, it's Clean Sport certified and safe for competition use. Head over to resolvet.com. That's RESOLVET.com and use code SJP at checkout for 10% off, linked in our show notes.
Coming up on today's show, we are chatting with the sports psychologist Mario Soto, who's based in California. Mario and I met via Facebook very recently, and his experience in our world is exactly what we were talking about last time on the podcast, with how we deal with nerves and what we expect to, go into our horse shows mentally. Welcome, Mario. Thanks for joining us.
It is a pleasure to be here and talking about something that's been I'm going to say a wonderful gift and an environment and a world that's been very welcoming to me.
Well, I guess I'll start. My first question is, I can assume that you're a horse person. How did you get into sports psychology? And actually, maybe the better question is, are you a horse person? Which came first?
So being a horse person, that came first. I have the scar to show for it.
Okay. We do as well.
And some of those scars don't go away as quickly. Some of them never do. So when I was in college, I just graduated and I moved to Northern California. I shared a place with 4 other roommates, and we used to go down to Half Moon Bay and we would just rent these horses. And I had no idea what I was doing. And all I know is these horses were magnificent. And you get exposed to these creatures who give you so much more than what you can ever really appreciate, unless you're kind of immersed and born into that world, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so, story short, my tragedy, which kind of led me down to this path of having a curiosity of confident nerves and whatnot, happened when I turned to my roommate and I said, let's switch horses. Your horse looks really cool, fast, and I want to try it out. And he looked at me and he says, are you sure? And my ego got answered rather than my better half, better self. And it took about 30 seconds for the horse to know exactly who was on him and how inexperienced that person was. And it took about 20 seconds later for me to be on my back and on my rear end, staring at the sky and thrown. And you know what the horse is doing for that? They take off and they go home. So I was left literally to walk back, and it was like the long Bataan death march back to the barn. A sore back for 6 weeks, cracked rib, messed up elbow. And that was my experience starting out. Fast forward almost 15 years later, I'm now in this field. I get a phone call from an orthodontist who's looking for some guidance and assistance because he had lost his confidence also from a fall. I said, I'll tell you what, I haven't really worked with too many people in this field. I have a curiosity to get back in it. So I tell you what, I'll let you buy me lunch and we'll sit and we'll chat and I'll see what I can do to help you. Unbeknownst to me, there was a gentleman within earshot who was listening to me give him some suggestions and some advice at the end gate. He introduced himself. His name was Robert Rydland. And he said, who are you? What do you do? This is really fascinating. Explained to him what I did, who I was. And he asked if I would come back the next day because he had a very dear friend that he'd like to introduce me to. That dear friend ended up being Will Simpson. And Will had just come off of winning gold in the Olympics. I think it was back in what was it, 2000, 2004, 2008?
2008, I believe.
2008. And so that started a phenomenal relationship and a partnership that continues to this day. But that was my introduction to show jumping. And then everything really took a hockey stick, if you will, of a ramp when we were working together and he was showing in thermal and it was one of the circuits and everything clicked. It was almost a perfect storm. And he won, I think it was 8 out of 10 Grand Prix. And I think you told me that the earlier record was 3. And so everyone from all over the country, periodicals, magazines, reporters, they were asked, all right, what's the secret sauce?
What's going on? Yeah.
What's happening? And he would answer, say, well, listen, I'm really watching my diet. I'm working with a nutritionist. I started this new workout with this thing called the kettlebell. And so he's sharing all these things, which I loved about him. He's very transparent. And then he said, and then I got my guy who gets my head right. And somebody stopped him and said, what do you mean? You're seeing a therapist? Is there something wrong with you? And bless his heart, he corrected me. He said, no. There's nothing wrong with me. My head guy, that's Coach Mario. He helps me make sure that what I have between my ears is clear so I can go out here and ride the best that I can. And my phone has never stopped ringing in your industry because of that relationship and that, I guess, that testimonial from him. I think that was like 2011, 2010. So I owe my career to him, and he has a past lifetime help for the rest of his, for free.
For free. That's pretty fantastic. And that's a great intro or first client, I guess.
No.
Are you primarily, do you only work with horse people now? Is it your full-time gig, or
No.
what's your days? What are your days like here?
So my busiest day is typically Wednesday because I call it my side hustle is I'm a professor to graduate students who want to learn this craft of sports psychology and performance at California Baptist University. So it's a 2-year master's degree program. I'm one of the, I guess, original faculty members for the inception of this program. And so I give them every bit of myself from 7 o'clock in the morning to about 7 at night. And then the rest of the week, I'm working with either firefighters and first responders. I'm working with race car drivers. I'm working with professional athletes. I have a baseball player. His name is JT Ginn, who will be on the record books for having been the last pitcher to get the last save in the Oakland A's Coliseum. So
okay.
That's kind of neat.
Sure.
So no, I think one of the things that has helped me have longevity, and now I guess I'm considered an elder in this field, is the fact that I never wanted to just be in a niche or just one sport or one segment of our population. And what that has allowed me to do is expand my range of stories, because ultimately what we do as coaches is we're storytellers. And if we're going to help someone work through, you talk about nerves and anxiety, or trying to have a breakthrough or get over something that's been impeding them, you don't just want to tell them what to do. You want to explain to them in as good a way. And then and the connected tissue is giving them examples from other areas, either within their sport, people that they know, or maybe other people who are in a different sport, but you make the story and the experience relatable. So there's not this stigma that it's only me, or the
Right.
moment's overwhelming, the situation's so overwhelming that I don't think I can do this. One of the things I really try and impress upon people is that you're not alone. We all deal with some kind of anxiety or let's say challenges. And anybody who's made it to the top, whether it's Will Simpson in the Olympic gold, or we've got the baseball playoffs starting out, a championship mindset doesn't just develop because you're thinking of it and all of a sudden it just manifests itself. You need a team. And in the professional world of sports, every team, whether it's soccer or even at the Olympic level with our show jumping team, there's a sports psychologist or a sports psychology consultant or a team of people there, clinical or otherwise, that's there to help them. And if
Mm-hmm.
you can remember back in the 2020 Olympics, we had COVID and we had Simone Biles deal with the twisties. Well,
Right.
here's arguably the GOAT in this field, and all of a sudden her world gets shifted a little sideways and upside down. And people could be judgmental and say, well, what's the matter with you? Suck it up. You're supposed to be the best.
And there were people like that, eh?
Oh, no question.
Yeah.
There's some real ugly and brutal people on social media who think they know everything and don't know a damn thing. And that's the problem. The higher up you go, the farther it is to fall. And the harder it is to stay on what I call this performance mountaintop. And you've got to do so many little things because those little things have a greater residual benefit or effect to the outcome. And so you have to really be on point. You cannot take little things for granted. Show jumping's perfect example. What's the difference between somebody doing a 0.90, 0.20, meter 40, or I said 0.20, meter 20, meter 40, or meter 60 at the Olympics? Because I will tell you, at the Olympics, that final round, 19 jumps, those jumps were as high as they were wide.
Did you attend the Olympics this year?
I did not, but I watched everything. And I told I had 3 people that were hoping to make the team. They didn't make it. So that would have been my ticket. But I saved myself a little bit of money.
There you go.
Got a chance, right? But it was phenomenal and arguably the most challenging course I've ever seen. And from my network of people, there were a lot of people who were having a very large gulp and rock in their throat walking the course.
Sure.
Because it was very intimidating. So here are people who are at the top of their game, and even they have to pause.
Yeah.
Which means they're human.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good sort of background. I want to, before we dive into more show jumping specific, I want to kind of touch back on a few of the things you brought up, which I think are super important more generally. You talked about back in 2008, 9, 10, people's reaction to Will saying, hey, I'm working with a sports psychologist, and sort of that, and I remember that my last junior year was 2008. And I remember there was just these sort of murmurings of people,
Yes.
certain juniors and professionals at the time starting to work with sports psychology, but there was still this kind of stigma around it of oh, those people need extra help, right? They're a bit and
That stigma's still here.
I'm sure it is. And I think that's kind of one of my questions. If you found that, as really in the last 10 to 15 years, there's been this much, much broader opening of the conversation around mental health in general, from, to real, serious, depression and anxiety and mental health issues. Did you find that the sort of niche of sports psychology, was there more of an early adoption of acceptance with sports psychology, or did it kind of ride the wave of that much broader mental health conversation?
That's a beautiful, beautiful question. I'm not sure I've been around long enough to answer that. I can only tell you my experience based on my windshield, if you will, of having been in this space and on this journey. My mentor, unbeknownst to me, I knew he was special, but he was arguably one of the legends in the field of sports psychology. His name is Dr. Ken Ravizza. He passed away. We lost him about 8 years ago. But he actually took me as a grad student to a barn up in, I don't know if it was Woodland Hills, and he introduced me to Karen Healy. Now, here's Karen Healy 20-some years ago, who was thinking out of the box, bless her heart. And there was no stigma with Karen. I want to be the best. I want my kids to be the best. I'm going to give you access to everything.
I believe that.
Yep, that's how we know her as well.
Yeah. And so she's seeing, if you're preparing for indoors or Cap Challenge or all these other shows, she's seeing the anxiety build up, leading to not just walking through the end gate, but even before. And I remember my first time going to Capital Challenge. I had 3 clients I was working with. I get there early and I'm watching, and I'm seeing half a dozen kids at some point over the course of the day running to the bathroom or running to stick their head in the trash can because the nerves is causing them to throw up.
Wow.
So I'm seeing this. I'm like, okay, there's job security for me here.
Yep,
okay.
there is.
Like a cheek. But what is it about the human nature that has us so in our head and so locked up that we're putting so much pressure on ourselves that we're making the moment bigger than what it's supposed to be? And that conversation initially started with my mentor and with Karen, and understanding the world of equitation and show jumping and just performance. So Kimmy, I'll try and answer your question by saying this. From my lens, it was removing the stigma, because my background is sports psychology, not clinical psychology. And I kind of like that, because the stigma is, if you have a clinical psychologist talking to you, well, then there must be something wrong, right? Why do we need therapy? This isn't therapy. This is performance psychology, where I'm looking at you as an athlete, and I'm going to talk to you like an athlete. I'm going to talk to you as if you're an elite athlete or you're a pro athlete. And what you want to do is get to the top of whatever it is that is in your field. I want to win a championship. I want to go from being a role player to a starter. I want to prepare for indoors, and I want to finish in the top 10 or top 3 of the world in the country. I have the top go-kart driver in arguably in the world, and he wants to eventually transition, become a Formula One race car driver. So there's something inherent in everyone that says, I want to be better. So for me, that's the whole world. Because even if you're a dad, even if you're just, you just want to learn how to have a better relationship with your kids or your families at home, everyone potentially could benefit from this. And I literally had a conversation with a colleague yesterday saying, we're going to try and brainstorm and see if we can expand this bandwidth of sports psychology and performance so we normalize it. And before she's done, her imprint, her legacy is she's hoping she can create something out there for single mothers so that they can learn how to regulate their energy, their anxiety, and make that experience more pleasant than what it needs to be. Because if anyone's a parent in here, it's hard work.
Right.
And if you're doing it by yourself, God bless you. It'll cause you to drink.
Yeah. So I think more saying a little bit broad for just another second, you've kind of talked about how the techniques and the methods you learn in sports psychology are more broadly applicable, right? Outside of just sports.
Question. Don't have to be just an elite athlete to benefit from them.
Yeah. What is, I guess then for you, what are some of the biggest differences between sports psychology and clinical psychology? Or really, are there lots of parallels and just different kind of applications? Or are there some still real major differences?
They're more similar than they are different. The differentiation might be if you're dealing with, let's say, an eating disorder. Mm-hmm. If you have severe depression or you have some form of chemical imbalance that would lead to mental illness, a clinical psychologist is going to be more apt to understand, diagnose, and maybe help you get some medication. I'm constantly reminding my graduate students, you need to understand what our role is and stay in your lane. If you do it well enough and you can articulate and establish trust, then some of this becomes therapy without it being therapy. Because let's say you have anxiety and it leads to, some kids needing to take beta blockers because they're so overwhelmed. I found out several years ago that 60% of professional musicians are taking some form of a beta blocker. And what that is it's a pill to try and calm their nerves. It's an anti-anxiety medication. And in today's world, there's other forms of medication. Some people are taking gummy bears or marijuana, whatever that, and I'm not subscribing to any of those things. I'm just telling you need to understand what's there and understand you're okay. There are answers for you. There are opportunities. There are places to go to learn how to manage that voice in your head that sometimes in certain situations that voice turns into a shouting match or screaming. And rather than it be a shouting match and negativity between your ears, my job is to learn how to teach you how to redirect it, change the voice so it becomes that of a cheerleader between your ears, and it helps you.
I love that conversation on that macro level, because there is something that everybody can relate to in terms of how to be better at whatever they're working towards. Could be sports, could be parenting, could be, just being a better human in their own life. How do you apply that in a micro level? What's the most common issue people come to you with in terms of with show jumping and riding specifically? And again, it could be on any level, could be in the 0.90s, like you said, could be at the Olympic level. But is there a commonality that of amongst things people are dealing with, and what advice can you give them?
So I'm writing these notes down. So I've got 3. Perfectionism.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I need to be perfect. And my comeback to that is, no, you don't need to be perfect. You need to be present.
Okay.
And that's
Yeah.
a whole conversation, right? What does it mean to be present? Well, if you're present on a horse, then you're listening with your body, not your ears, not your head.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who are highly intellectual. Well, if they are, they're up here. And those are the ones that, and I don't know who your audience is, but they'll laugh at this. Those are the athletes I tell you are the ones that need to put your head in your ass.
Right.
If you do that, maybe now you get out of your own way and you'll have a conversation with the right part of your anatomy with the horse, because that's
Sure.
learn how to listen to them. The other one obviously is confidence. And it's because they're not giving themselves any grace. They're beating themselves up. They're revisiting their past mistakes and their past rides, that last chip that was down, rather than go back to recalibrating like a GPS and going back to that next line and preparing for the next jump. I have people who will stop mentally, and then they'll, another fault, another rail, another fault. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why would you wouldn't be in school and you take a quiz or a test, and it's a 10-question test or quiz, and you get stuck at question 5. You wouldn't just put the pen down, say, I quit, and walk out of the room. You have to finish the ride. You have to finish the test, because there may be still something there to learn. So for those people who are lacking in grace or their confidence is kind of shattered, I remind them, we're here to learn. Your job is to be coachable and to be open for information, and let that information be feedback. Weaponize it rather than see it as criticism. Oh, I did this wrong. Oh, I did that wrong. Oh, I'm terrible. No, you're not. You might be one ride away, one jump away from a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to do that is if you're leaning into it and you're exploring what's there. You almost have to go back to thinking like a kid and have a playful like curiosity and energy. Because again, if we go back to the horse, what's the language the horse speaks? It's instinct. It's either fight or flight. And I shouldn't even say that. If it's not going to fight, it's because you're reassuring them that everything's okay. You must be the alpha. You must be the pack leader when you're sitting on this beautiful animal. Otherwise, it's going to be distracted because they're animals. And your job is to keep them from being distracted too much and have them go in a straight line. And if they're distracted because of your anxiety coming through your body straight into them, ride's over.
Mhm.
Some point it's going to slingshot you, or it's going to stop, or it's going to give you a more challenging ride, but it's giving you everything that you're asking it to do. So again, if the horses could talk, they would tell me, God, where have you been?
Yeah. I think that a lot. Yes.
No, I think that's such a good point. Of you made several, but a couple of the last ones were, one is that sort of leaning into the discomfort, the nerves, and instead of saying, we talked a little bit about in the last podcast of the want for a lot of people to just not be nervous, right? I just wish I wasn't nervous, and it's like, well, that A is impossible, right? And for most people, and B, it's, the nerves can be useful, right? We can learn something, they can teach us about what we care about and how we react, and having the tools to really harness that in a productive way
So if I
versus
may,
not being nervous.
Nerves. All right. So what is stress? Stress is our body's response to a situation. And we can equate it as, okay, your body's turning on the engine of the car and it's warming up. You don't want stress to be so overwhelming where you're revving the engine constantly in the red line, because eventually something's going to blow.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn how to recognize and regulate what that stressor is, rather than the elephant in the room and I'm fearing it. Not give it.
Oh,
away
I'm gonna
allow
cut for 1
that
minute.
circumstance to get
Sorry,
bigger.
guys. I just need to cut for 1 minute. Mario, your sound was creeping out for a moment, but it seems like you're better now.
Yeah, I think the internet just cut for a second.
Okay. So why don't I'll count us back in, and if you could start with the what is stress portion, that would be perfect. And I love this line of thought, by the way. This is awesome. 3, 2, 1.
So stress is a natural occurrence. We all have it. We try and avoid it, but it is as if you were turning on the engine and it's warming itself up. It's your body telling you we're about ready to do something, take on some task. And it doesn't matter if you're a Navy SEAL and you're in combat, or if you're a parent and you got a kid screaming and you don't know why, and your body goes through the same physiological change. Blood pressure goes up, you're sweating, you feel clammy in your hands, and you start having clouded thoughts and increased heart rate. All this, it's all similar. So it doesn't matter if it's literally a war and heated argument with the challenging personality, stage fright, or a kid going to cap challenge, or a kid going to indoors, pre-to-states, whatever the event is, or they're moving up for the first time to meter 30. We have that little dry mouth moment. Why? Because we care.
Because we care. Exactly.
We care. So stress is about our body saying, okay, I'm going to help you prepare for that moment. Now, here's where we hit a tipping point. If we care too much, we can overwhelm, and the cup is overflowing with emotion and distractions and things that get in the way and remove us from being present and in our body and staying in charge. Our breathing goes away. And what's the hub of the wheel, if you will, of this work? The breath. So you hear trainers say, are you breathing? I need for you to breathe. What's missing is teaching them how to properly breathe like an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now we're breathing to, kind of survive. But if you watch baseball players, because right now the playoffs are going on, what does a pitcher do? What does a batter do in between every pitch? They step out or they step off the mound. It's a cleansing breath. It's an intentional breath. I have every one of my riders take 2 breaths before they walk into the end gate. The second one being a little deeper and a little slower than the first. That way, at least I know they're getting off to a really good start. But stress should not be something we run away from, or we cringe, or all of a sudden we wig out because of. We need to learn how to define it so we understand it. And when we understand it, we can actually weaponize it so it helps us. Because it comes from the same bucket as excitement.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
just now how you're channeling it.
Can you talk a little bit about what actually is going on physiologically in the body? I mean, not in terms of, biologists, but we all know the feeling of when you're stressed, there's somewhere in the body. Kimmy and I both talked about how, we feel closed or smaller in our bodies or clamped in.
Well,
Can you
think about
describe that a bit?
so one of the things that if you're a good sports psychologist, sports psychology consultant, you need to learn how to listen with more than just your ears. You need to observe. You need to watch body language. Excuse me, just like a judge is watching a horse. If we're talking equitation, if it's one of the subjective sports, they're watching the performance to look for certain things, both in
Sure.
the rider and the horse. Whereas show jumping, it's time. It's
Right.
it's real black and white, pretty easy. But even then, you can tell if there's something wrong with the horse and or rider. I
Mm-hmm.
had a very dear friend of mine, a longtime client and friend, Everardo Hegovich, who I think was on the Olympic team back in the early 2000s. I'm watching him about a month ago at Del Mar, and I'm standing next to his girlfriend, fiance, and the first 5 jumps looked terrible. He cleared, they were clean, but it just wasn't right. And I turned to her and I said, "What's going on? Is he not doing well, or is that horse just being a butthead?" And she said, "Probably a little bit of both, but that horse is difficult. Comes around a 6, goes over it, hits the 7. There's two different agendas." And then he literally does a face plant into the ground. And I thought I lost my friend.
Oh,
That was an extremely, and I've seen some really bad accidents. If we've been around long enough, you can't help it. It's part of the sport. I froze. Now I've been doing this a long time. I literally froze, and I'm having an out of body conversation with myself saying, "What are you doing? You should be over there checking in on him. You should be over there holding his hand. You should." But in that moment, no. Why? Because I had an emotional connection to this person that overrode everything. When we have too much emotion, we lock up physically, and that can get in the way. And remember, these horses are emotional beings. They're instinctual. They cannot comprehend cognitively what we're feeling. They just know, okay, that's too much for me, and they're telling me I should be fearful.
Mhm.
So I watch body language, because you can tell when somebody's really confident, really present. There's a certain type of posture, certain
Mm-hmm.
type of fitness, and they're dialed in. When somebody is overwhelmed, likewise, you see a shifting of their of their body language, of their positioning. They're very loose. They're very tight. They're not breathing. Their heart is in their throat. They can't hear anything because they've tuned everything out, because they're either myopic in their vision, they're tunneled, or they're taking way too much.
Scattered
They're
everywhere.
all over the place. They're scattered. So you learn to recognize the signs. When I do my firefighter stress management talk, I have a slide that has about 30 different examples of one's human response to stressors. And not everyone is the same. Some people pit out, some people have dry mouth, some people freeze and look like they're smiling. And that's a whole another conversation that I have with coaches, to remind them, just because you think you know what's going on, you may not understand how they're responding. Because if a kid is doing this and you're chewing them out and they're smiling, they're not being disrespectful to you. They are so locked up. They are scared, but they don't know how to articulate that. So our responsibility as coaches and teachers or trainers, our job is to understand rather than judge. So high blood pressure or elevated blood pressure, elevated heart rate, no connectivity, because what happens, we hear you're what's the term that's always thrown out? More contact with the horse.
Yeah.
And you see the knees going this way, right? Well, they don't understand that. And so one of the other things I remind teachers and trainers is that don't just settle on telling them what to do. Show them. Show and tell. because some people process information differently. That's another kind of aha moment that I try and bring to the discussion with the trainers and as well as the athlete. We process information differently. When I was a grad student, thank God I had a little mini recorder that they allowed me to put on the desk at on the podium so that the instructors would speak into it and I could hear the lectures again to go over and rewrite my notes. Because if I'm just listening, I'm tuning certain things out because I'm processed, but I'm losing some really valuable detail. And sometimes the value is in the details, the subtleties. So it's not a specific answer, but when you start looking for certain signs, you can tell when someone is out of their element. And rather than get them to speed up, you got to get them to sometimes just slow down and get comfortable or have a conversation. Pull it over. Tell me what's going on rather than just assume or walk away. Because and again, I'm trying not to judge, but I've seen now hundreds of trainers. There's some really good. There's some really bad. But most people want to get it, and they're there for all the right reasons. They want to help people. But if you don't know what you don't know, then you don't realize there might be just as one little bit of information that you can incorporate to help your rider have a breakthrough moment. And I take responsibility for that because at the end of the day, we are there to add value to that relationship and that experience. That's it. If you can do that and you do that consistently, you will always have job security.
Right.
That's part of my philosophy. If you bring that, everything else takes care of itself.
So the follow-up question to that is, let's say somebody would like to practice how to handle their stress, but doesn't have access to somebody like you. What are some techniques that they can start putting into their own routine to help that? Obviously, we talked about, confidence and self-talk and working on making sure something isn't overly important, which to the credit of, kind of a forward-thinking moment, I feel like this podcast really centers on making riding less important to each person while keeping it important in the, it's important to you in the moment, but in the bigger scheme of things, it's not that important, and how do you draw that fine line? But in my experience, we can talk about that all we want, but what can we do physically in the moment that brings us back to that realization?
All right, I'm going to try and shorten this answer, but first,
well, that was a run-on question. So
no, but it was brilliant because at the end of the day, we want to give people tools to
exactly,
apply. Otherwise, we're just talking.
Sure.
So back in 2016, I had a young lady that the Olympic swim coach brought to me, and he said, she's 16. This kid is arguably one of the best our country has, and when she's on, she's got a motor in her rear end that she goes back and forth and touches a wall. But when she's distracted and doesn't believe in herself, she sinks to the bottom like a rock. And so I watched her at an international event, and some of these athletes are Amazons. They're, women are 6'4" and long limbs like a basketball player. It's just amazing. Then I see this little kid come out. She's half their size. And I'm like, there's no way that's her. This is the kid you're talking about? I'm doing the eye comparison. She didn't pass the eye test for me. Great lesson, though. Great lesson, because you should never judge a book by its cover. Because when she got in the water, okay, I saw what was there. But her Achilles heel was her belief in the self-confidence. And they were trying to push her maybe a little too soon, but that's very normal when you are dealing with high-level sports or the Olympics, because everybody wants to have the best team.
Sure.
So after about 3 weeks, the team got together, and I said, here is my take on what we need to be working with her on. Because right now, when she doesn't do her best, it's because she doesn't believe she belongs there. She doesn't think she's worthy to be alongside of Katie Ledecky over here or this person over there. And she goes inward. rather than focus on what's happening between in her lanes. If we can get her to do that, then we're going to have somebody who I think may have multiple Olympic opportunities, not just this game. So long story short, we got her to believe. That's all I wanted her to do. I didn't care about the win. When we get in trouble is when we care too much about the win.
Right.
I'm flying to indoors next weekend, and every one of those kids that I'm working with, they want to win. The parents want to win. The trainers want to win. It's like, yeah, you understand.
The outcome. Yep.
If you focus so much solely on the outcome, you get lost. And then if you get lost, it's hard to recover. The ones who tend to win when the moment is big, those are the ones who focus on the process. We've all heard that word before.
Yep.
They minimize the event in the moment so they can rise above it. So what I had her do was just focus on concentrating on getting a great jump, putting one arm in front of the other, kick, get your ass to touch the wall and come back. Focus on that. I don't care who's over here. I don't care who's over there. What matters is who shows up in this lane.
Literally your lane.
Your lane. That's all you have control of. And so she ended up qualifying. She went to nationals. She was in the first of 8 heats. She won her heat, which meant she was one of the top 8 in the country.
Wow.
And after we talked that night, I said, I don't care what you do. You won. That was what I wanted for you. Because if you can believe that you belong here, if you believe you got the skill to do this, you can do anything. Now you're dangerous. So she ended up not going to the Olympics, didn't make the team. She came in last. But does that mean she lost? No, because let me tell you why. After that, USC found out about her and they gave her a full ride scholarship at the age of 16.
Wow.
Yeah,
so that's a huge
bad.
win.
And they now know about her and know about her sister. So she's still swimming competitively. She's still relevant. So how does that translate to kids in show jumping or adults in show jumping? You cannot put all your attention on, I gotta win. That's too much pressure. Even when I just say that, I'm immediately putting pressure in my hands and my arms and my shoulders.
Right.
And
There's
I'm
tension.
sitting on, what do you think the horse is going to feel if I was sitting on a horse?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hello, I'm awake. What's going on? And if you compound that with, we're at indoors, we're at Kentucky, we're at Spruce Meadows, we're at Wellington. Okay, circumstances are elevated. What are you doing to mitigate those circumstances so you can elevate your ride? Breathe. And I don't mean, no, you got to breathe to get the blood flowing. So you could always have feeling in your extremities. Because if you don't have feeling in your extremities, you have no contact and you're on a runaway horse. So breathe. I also give my students markers on the course. It's almost like you're running a short 5K. And there's always volunteers on the course to hand you water, hand you something. And so I want you to put markers on the course so that as you pass that marker,
another breath.
Take a quick breath. So that by the time you finish, you're not so exhausted that you feel like you're so out of shape. Because so many people do. And it isn't because they're out of shape, it's they've drained their tank.
Yeah, and they've stopped breathing.
Yes. So awareness of what's going on, taking the breath, and then allowing yourself to kind of melt into the saddle and focus on one thing, not the win. Let's just get off to really nice rhythm. Let's attack the first jump and focus on one thing, and then let the domino effect begin.
Yep.
That tends to be the formula for success. I had a 9-year-old kid, just panicked, would lock up, would freeze up. And this one happened to lock up and freeze up because he was always hyper aware of people watching him, which is kind of sad. He's only 9. You're supposed to have fun. You're basically going over a Cavaletti. Let's just play. And so I made it a game. I made it fun. I made it tongue in cheek where he got to laugh at himself. And the next thing I know, in fact, I think I posted it 2 days ago on my social media. His name is Henry. He did phenomenally well at the Flintridge show. And so if we can get a 9-year-old to do it, we can get anybody to do it, but they have to believe themselves. And this is great advice for trainers. Trainers are surrogate parents. And it doesn't matter if they're 9 or they're 39. They become an extension of their family. Our role is so critical to helping them validate who they are and what they're doing. So our tone of voice as trainers and teachers are reminding them of what they did well, especially when they have such a critical mind or a perfectionist-based mind. Their mind is already, before they come out of the ring, focusing on what they did wrong, how terrible they looked, how they're ruining the horse, all these things which have no truth in it at all. So that's why this term cheerleader is real important, and it applies to both their self-talk, but also us being able to reprogram how they think about what they do. So we have to be deliberate in our intentionality of what our role is and what we're trying to get them to see, so that then, after feeling a little better about who they are and what they've done, now they can take the kernel of correction that you want to give them so that they can work on it and be motivated to work on it the next go around. Because a defeated and deflated individual, that person's not going to take anything in. They just want to sit and go in the dark corner and be depressed for a while. It's hard to bring them back.
Right. Wow. I could talk to you about this stuff for hours.
I could go all day.
Kimmy, what else you got?
At the risk of going all day, I want to, because you've kind of talked about in the moment, right, of the breathing exercises and the confidence and the sort of where your focus and your awareness is, not too inward, but also not too outward, right? That middle ground. How does sort of looking further before, we get to the ring or we get to the pool or wherever it is, how does preparedness play into that in like a broader sense? And some people kind of thrive on being thrown into situations that are maybe a little over their head, but most people, I think it's fair to say, probably don't. And probably if they come to a situation that they don't feel prepared for, that's just going to amplify all of these problems.
Preparation is everything. You want to know how to be able to solve the nerve thing, you got to feel confident in your training and in your preparation. And so if somebody's really afraid that the cups are set too high, it's probably because they don't feel they had enough reps at home in their practices and in their lessons to normalize what they're being asked to do. And then you bring in the insecurity and the ego. Okay, wait a minute. All my bar mates are doing meter 30. I should be there. Well, you only had this horse for about 3 months and you've only been riding for about a year. You need to stay at the .90s for a while rather than let your ego dictate what you should be doing. So I think sometimes trainers are challenged with maintaining boundaries and realistic expectations. You have to have those conversations with them because in a way, a rider is trusting their safety with you. And so one of the phrases that I have used that I think when I first got into this, I left a very successful field and job to do this 2-year commitment to study under this legend and I'll say his minions, who arguably are still some of the best in the business. And my wife said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Honey, I think I really found something that speaks to me." And it didn't hurt that when I met Dr. Revise, we sat at a Denny's till like 1 a.m. and he said, "You have something that I can't teach and that would be very effective in this." And so that started my journey. But if we don't explain to people what our role is, if we don't guide them, we're failing them. And so expectations, we need to be willing to risk the relationship by speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And I tell people pay me really well, but I have to be a truth teller. I cannot ever feel good about what it is that I do if I'm lying to make somebody, feel better. No, my job is to help you make yourself feel better by celebrating the breakthrough. And I'm there with you in that entire journey. But I am not going to lie to you. You have no business being at a meter 30 if you haven't put in the work. And if you're still a little nervous, guess what? Don't show this weekend.
Well, to go with that conversation for this week's training exercise, I'd love to share what I do in preparation for visualizing how I'm going to feel at the ring when I'm dealing with nerves, or if I know I have a big event coming up. So this can be done at home, and this is really for any situation that you think you're going to be a little nervous at, or even just something you care about. Like we said, nerves aren't a bad thing. Stress isn't a bad thing. It's just feedback. So, while we cannot totally emulate the horse show ring at home, what you can do is visualize how the horse show will be when you are at home. So I like to set up a course of poles on the ground and imagine that that's, the course I'm going to be doing at the horse show, whether it's a hunter course or a jumper course, doesn't matter. And it doesn't have to be a full course either. It can just be 3 or 4 poles set across your ring that you can make a course out of. Something on this, side diagonal as basics, or even as complicated as just setting a pole next to each jump that is already set in your ring if you'd like lines. So set a basic to challenging course of poles in your ring and start by being off your horse and starting to visualize what the horse show schooling area will feel like when you're in your ring off your horse, and starting from getting on a mounting block or having someone give you a leg up, taking a few breaths once you immediately get on, and just take a walk around your ring on a loose rein. Let your horse take some breaths as well. And even at the walk, you can close your eyes and imagine what it would be like right then to be in a schooling area. You're just getting on about 10 trips ahead of your round. How does the schooling area feel? Visualize where the jumps are in the ring, watching your trainer walk out to the jump. Try to imagine what it would feel like when you're getting ready to start working. Does that feel like tension in your stomach? Do you feel nervous? Do you feel relaxed? Just try to imagine how you would feel and then breathe your way right through it. And that sounds corny, but like we've talked about, breathing is a big deal when it comes to controlling your body and your mind. So at that point, you're just practicing what the schooling area feels like. You can open your eyes, pick up your trot, try to think about what you need to do to prepare your horse to jump in the shorter period of time that you have in the schooling area. Maybe you have 5 or 6 minutes to get them warmed up. And usually in the schooling area, I'm not worried about a lot of flexion or a lot of school, overtraining. I'm really just getting my horse's muscles warmed up. If I'm doing a jumper class, I do work on getting the mouth soft a bit, but hopefully you've done all of your homework that morning, so your horse is pretty lubed up. So as you're flatting through your ring at home, you're imagining what it would be like as if you were schooling to prepare to go into the horse show ring. When you're ready to jump, you're going to pick a pole that you would be using as a schooling jump and just canter over it in the same fashion that you would if you were schooling and your trainer was standing there before you go into the ring. You can do that back and forth. You're not worried about the height of the jumper actually even jumping. You're trying to take that element out of it. Now, as you practice this more, feel free to add in actual jumps, but this is just a basic starter where you're having more focus on the visualization and less focus on the how do I find a distance. You can combine that later, but this is really much more of a mental exercise. As you're warming up, you're still doing some riding basics like pace and track, and thinking about how you're preparing your horse and noticing what you're doing that's affecting your horse. Are you over anticipating them being too slow or too fast? Are you trying too hard to nail that lead change in the schooling area? And you're not just visualizing what you want to do, but you're being aware of what you are doing. So this takes a little practice and a little time to get used to. And it can feel like it's taking a really long time. But what's really happening is you're at home breaking things down. When you're at the horse show, you want things to slow down and everything can seem really fast. So the idea is to let things slow down. Once you've gone through a good amount of time that you feel prepared to how you would feel before you go into the ring, go to the end of your ring where you might find an in-gate if it were at a horse show, stand still and take 3 more breaths. And just make them as long and as deep as you can. close your eyes again and visualize your course. You might not be closing your eyes when you're in the horse show arena, but this is something where you're just trying to get an idea of, in your mind, what you want to happen in the ring while you're sitting at the in-gate. And that's what every rider should do before they enter the ring anyways, whether it's just looking at the course and remembering where they're going, whether it's trying to really get in their brain what they want their horse to do and what they want their own body to do. So take some time to do that. And that might feel awkward. That might feel like your horse wants to move around. Take your time. If that takes an extra 10 minutes there, this is practice. That's okay. Take another 2 breaths before you're ready to enter your quote ring. And then when you're ready, walk in and execute the round as if you were at the horse show. Pick up your circle, pick up your canter, create a circle, pick points on the course where you are deliberately breathing. I really loved that point in our chat. And I think that picking points where you land from each line is a really great idea. You're slowing down anyways. Slow down your breath. Actually breathe. Practice breathing as you're going around a course. Again, these are over your poles. So you're adding in a little more consciousness to what you're doing and awareness, and you're taking away the how do I get to a jump and how do I find the right distance? So go through your entire round, an entire course of 8 or 10 obstacles, and see if you can really be aware of how much you're breathing, how your horse is reacting, and implementing what you've just visualized as to how you'd like your round to go. Finishing with a closing circle as well, and then walk out of the ring or the imaginary ring, wherever your boundaries are. So practicing this frequently, and maybe that's your whole lesson or your whole ride for the day, is doing that 3 or 4 times in a row, where you get in the mental practice of slowing your brain down, slowing your breathing down, and really being aware of how you feel on the horse before you go into the ring, so that when you are at the horse show or in any arena or event that requires some extra thought or some nerves that come up, you have this to tap into, that you can remember how this felt. You can do a lot of visualization off the horse too. There's a lot of times where I will be, in bed the night before a horse show or an event, where I close my eyes and I think about how I want to feel the next day over a course. You don't know what the course is that's coming the next day, but you know a lot of courses that you've already done. I'll visualize a course that I've already completed in real life that I know went well and feel how that is, and visualize how that went. And I'll make up a course as well and visualize how I want that to go. So that's a real practice and a real skill that you can hone in on, that will be helpful when you get to the horse show. So everybody try that at home. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of the Show Jumping Podcast. Be sure to join our Facebook group, Overheard on the Show Jumping Podcast, and submit your questions there. Until next time, keep your eyes up and your heels down.